Hi, and welcome to the NVR podcast number 2. Today we're going to be talking about solution focus and NVR. I'm Rachael Aylmer.
And I'm Peter Jakob.
Peter, I'm really curious as to why you wanted to talk about this particular topic.
Well, I guess there were two considerations. One is that a lot of the ways in which we work with NVR use solution-focused methods, but more importantly, I guess, the spirit of solution-focused work. The other reason was that I guess there are very big differences between how practitioners position themselves with parents. Differences often between solution-focused therapy and NVR, perhaps also differences in NVR within the sort of NVR community. And I was wondering whether we could look at how do we position ourselves in a particular way as NVR practitioners when we work with that solution-focused understanding.
Okay. Do you want to say more? Do you want to talk about how you think that?
Sure,
Yeah.
that sounded pretty abstract, didn't it?
Yeah.
So, I mean, there are many things that strike me as being informed by solution-focused therapy that you or I would do, but that may not be that common in NVR in general. So, I remember many years ago having a conversation with Frank van Holen, who said that what they do in Belgium, or what he and his colleagues do, is when they have a campaign of concern, for every message expressing concern about a recent incident of problem behavior, a child or an adolescent has been violent or has done something that was very self-destructive. For every one message of concern, they have 3 messages, 3 positive messages about something that the child has done that is considered positive. So I really liked that idea. Worked on it somewhat, and then came to this distinction between problematic incidents and positive events. And then I thought, well, what would positive events look like? And from a solution-focused perspective, a positive event could be an exception to the problem. So normally we would see an outburst, we would see an escalation in the family in a particular context, and then it didn't happen. And then something else happened. And from a solution-focused point of view, we'd want to know what else happened. What happened instead, And so, for example, the parents were able not to raise their voice when the child was getting very angry, but also the child was able to take himself away, maybe went outside, stomped around a little bit until his arousal came down. He didn't feel quite so angry anymore and could see things from a different angle, rather than attacking his parents as he may have in the past. That would be an exception to the problem. And I felt...
So in the positive then would be perhaps a supporter could then say how they'd heard how well he managed his violence.
Yeah. And I guess I was a little wary of too much praise, because in a way, if the supporter texted or spoke with the child on the phone and said, "Hey, you did that. Well done. Super." It could even express a negative expectation.
Which is what I was going to come on to.
Oh, yeah, you want to?
No, I was just going to say that I was making some notes as you were talking. Not all parents feel that their child wants to hear that praise. Not all parents feel comfortable or confident that their child can manage that level of praise. And so, again, it comes back to um, the support network being well informed of their
Yeah.
intentions and how role play really does support that. But yeah, the child doesn't really want to always hear, and the parents sometimes misunderstand what that positive message could look like.
What's your experience of how children might respond or react adversely to praise over different kinds of
I
behavior?
was talking to an adoption social worker this week who was referring in a family to our service, and that she mentioned the young person is unable to pick up on social cues. And one of the things the young person felt distressed by was the social worker, when she visited the family, the social worker would smile and talk to the young person. And the young person had expressed that she found the social worker smiling very difficult to manage.
Mm-hmm.
The social worker explained why she smiled at the
Mm-hmm.
young person during an interview or a discussion. The young person fed back to the social worker that she said, "I think you're just laughing at me."
Right.
And that was the young person's interpretation of the social worker's friendly smile. And it's, this young person was able to articulate that. But I've also witnessed parents who perhaps we've talked about giving some 2 to 3 positives alongside a message of concern, will then decide to praise the child for not trashing the house, or praise
Yeah.
the child for not attacking. And that, it's not until I can then sit with the parents and explore that are, those the purpose of that praise. So
Mm.
I'm grateful for you for not kicking my head in today.
Mm.
And, and once we can talk through that, the parent is able to kind of think, yeah, what am I saying thank you for?
Yeah.
So I think sometimes many parents want lots of very practical uh, examples of what praise would look like. So it could just be, the real simplicities of life. That it was lovely to sit with you at breakfast this morning.
Yeah. And I think that's really important. And maybe the urge to praise comes from a belief that you could absolutely make it happen if you just
Mhm.
praise the child enough, and the
Yeah.
child will then take it on board. And I think that's a misguided belief. I think,
Mm.
of course, psychology over decades has told people to praise children to the hilt. And now, academic research psychologists have taken a very different view of that. So, and yes, praise can actually be interpreted as the opposite.
Mm.
It can express that negative expectation. Thank you for not punching your mother in the face. Uh, is not really very helpful. Um, I've found that what can be more helpful are first person messages.
Mm.
So, I you heard recently that when you've been getting upset about things, you've been taking yourself off and thinking about it, and that made me feel good to hear that. I was pleased to hear that.
Mm.
That first person message, it also won't be experienced as controlling by the young person. They're just talking about themselves. It's an acknowledgement. So
Mm.
the formula I use is acknowledgement rather than praise. Yeah. Unless unless the experience has been that the young person really takes well to praise.
Mm. Mm.
That's I mean, it's always a question of what happens in the individual family or situation.
Absolutely. And a lot of parents will sometimes, will challenge me when we talk about offering those positive messages,
mm,
will automatically shut me down and say, my child doesn't like praise.
mm,
And so it's that opportunity to let's
mm,
explore
mm.
what positives look like
Yeah.
for your family, for your child. How do you communicate
Mm.
the positives in your family, in your household? What does it look and feel like?
How do you, and maybe sometimes in indirect ways, how do you show that you noticed?
Mm,
I'm just thinking of this isn't actually from working with NVR so much, but I was working with a psychiatric ward. And on this ward, there was a woman who was very much at risk of suicide, and she was very, very severely depressed. And
mm,
I had several meetings so that I could speak to each member of staff. And what we eventually ended up doing was that whenever she does anything that is an exception to getting worse, whenever she does anything that is living,
mm.
they would acknowledge in some shape or form. And I remember a nurse in the second meeting saying to me, "Oh, you'd be proud of me, Peter." I said, "Why would I be proud of you?" And she said, "Well, I think I got it right." Uh, she came out of her room by herself, nobody pushing her, goading her, anything. And she sat down in the living area and she picked up a fashion magazine. And I just sat down next to her and picked up another fashion magazine. I said, "Oh," and I said, "And then what happened?" She said, "Well, I just pointed at a dress she was looking at. And I said, "Oh, that's a nice dress. I like that one." And I said, "Oh, what did she do?" Well, she just went, "Ugh." Okay, so so that is a form of acknowledging, I guess. And so in the campaign of concern, in a solution focused way, people can acknowledge rather than go over the hilt in praising. But I was just coming back in my mind to what you said about, you called it the little things in life,
Mm,
acknowledging the little things in life. And
mm.
you used an example of just the child had sat at breakfast with the parents. Can you say more about those little things in life?
Those little things, I think, if I think about a family I'm working with right now, with the mother and I are talking quite a lot in our sessions about the little things in life, and there's a huge list of them. Um, the mother does a lot of the onus of I love brushing your hair. You've got beautiful hair. I love brushing it.
Hmm.
Um, I saw you on the trampoline this afternoon bouncing, and I smiled.
Hmm.
I enjoyed seeing you play.
Hmm.
Those tiny little tiny things. That the child also goes into the garden to stroke a neighbouring cat, um, and the mother just said how she acknowledged the child's gentleness when she was
Hmm.
stroking the cat. And I think the cat incident was a really poignant thing for me when I heard the mother say, we were asking, what else does the child do? And the mother said the child finds the neighbouring cat and she loves this cat and she plays with this cat and she strokes
Hmm.
this. And when I asked the mother if she could share what she saw with the child, the mother's face just lit up.
Hmm.
It was almost that she really connected with that language, that she felt so much more comfortable
Hmm.
saying something like, I noticed how gentle you were
Hmm.
stroking cat. And the mum just smiled. That I think it brought her a lot of comfort and warmth, remembering seeing her daughter in that way, feeling comfortable, offering that kind of positivity. It felt right. It fit for her, and also was really poignant around NVR. So the
Yeah.
child has
Yeah.
a gentle side to her. She can and has the ability to not be violent and can show tenderness and compassion towards another thing or animal or person. Mm.
In these instances, and I think they go beyond even being exceptions to the problem. In these instances, it feels to me that the mother was more telling a different story of the child to the child and to you,
Mm,
and that was having a certain effect on her. You
mm,
said it made the mother smile to tell you about her acknowledging these things
yeah.
and telling her daughter that she'd noticed that she liked that, that it made her feel good. So it seemed to also, um, in your telling, meet a need of the mothers.
Mm.
Is that right?
Totally. There's been a lot of unrest, as you can imagine, if you're being attacked 5, 6, 7, 8, 9, 10 times a day by your child so violently that the mother had experienced a spell where she had withdrawn and had found herself avoiding any kind of communication
Mhm.
contact with her child. And so she's been working incredibly hard in maintaining her presence again
Mhm.
in her child's mind. And I think having these conversations has helped her reconnect with herself, with her child's needs, to have those tender moments. I think just to acknowledge these small things just has really supported um, those relational gestures, that she can find the loveliness about her child again
Yeah.
and really reconnect with all of that. I don't know if that answered your question, did it?
I don't know. I think it does because I mean, I think that is an innate need for
Mm,
parents. Parents need to be able to have a good enough image of their child.
mm,
Parents need to be able to feel, yes, beyond all difficulties, my child is also a lovable person.
I
And
think I think as well, just kind of on the same subject but sidetracking slightly. I made a couple of notes. Not all parents want to be solution focused. So I think of this parent in mind,
Mhm.
and her mother is incredibly solution focused, and in the worst aftermath of a violent attack, the grandmother will still see some kind of positivity. And the mother has shared, like she really respects her mum's
Mm.
generosity of love and compassion, but it's not always really helpful. She doesn't always want to hear it. She sometimes wants to hear, "That was hideous. That was awful."
Yeah,
Y
yeah. And of course, to me, that is not necessarily in the spirit of solution focused work, always wanting to see everything in a positive way and see it in through rose tinted glasses. That's that would mean that one would not attune to the parent who is experiencing some pretty awful stuff. I think the good thing about the 3-to-1 rule
mm,
in how we do NVR is that we do have responses to very problematic, terrible, dangerous, hurtful, injurious, violent incidents.
mm,
So, because otherwise, we would be inviting parents and we would be inviting their supporters to brush things under the carpet and not
yeah,
not talking about violence or other forms of harmful behavior would mean to give license to that. If we don't talk about it, if we don't bring it out into the open, um, we are inadvertently permitting that to happen. So
mm,
by talking about it, we withdraw our permission for that. We make it very clear, we don't accept this. Yet with the three positive incidents, we balance it.
yeah,
We help people have a different narrative of their child in which they don't just see their child as a violent person. They can reconnect with other parts of the child. And I'm thinking of what Chaim Omer always says, when he speaks of the orchestra of voices in the child. You know,
mm,
there's so many different voices in the child that are unheard.
mm,
And with these, or barely heard, I mean, we do hear them. If there's an exception to the problem or these little moments that you were referring to, we do hear the other voice of the child, and we're magnifying it, aren't we? We're making it louder. We're giving it more space. That's all. I was thinking of what I call those little moments. I call them thrive events. So events that show, tiny events that the child is thriving in some way or the other. I was working with a parent with an adult child who has been socially withdrawn, and she told me, he's been completing his college application. Okay, you could think of that as an exception to the problem. Maybe he's looking at the outside world, but he's also thriving or showing a green shoot or the seed. Maybe it's not even a green shoot yet. The seed of thriving. And sometimes I think there are moments that don't seem to be related to the problem. Even a child may show a kind of an act of kindness, like that girl that you spoke about, who strokes the cat, the neighborhood cat, the neighboring neighbor's cat, gently. So a gentleness in her behavior. There can be an act of kindness to another person. A child who is no longer as aggressive, perhaps, as they were a while back, may be able to pay attention better at school. And there can be many, many different ways in which we can see children thrive, and in which supporters of the parents can communicate to the child,
Yeah.
Okay.
Yeah.
Okay, well, should we take a minute or two to just reflect on our conversation?
Yeah. Let's. I think for me, it's so important to sometimes really slow my work down and help parents to really connect with the parents' distress, connect with the parents' ability to connect with their child or not connect with their child. How might we just start that process? And I think just thinking about our discussion today, that there are so many ways that we can help parents find some positivities. And no matter how small those tiny little nuances can be, I think it's really nice that a parent can come up with some and explore how they can be offered to the child, in what tone, in what capacity. Sometimes it could just be a short verbal, sometimes it could be something where you're sitting with the child and you give this lovely example of what you've witnessed in them, but to not let that be bypassed, for parents to be able to connect. Yeah.
I think we've just slowed down in our conversation, because what I've just noticed is that we only talked about one single method, solution-focused method in NVR, rather than speaking about all manner of different ways in which you can work. I think what we did was we looked more at the spirit of a solution-focused attitude within NVR.
Yeah.
And I've just noticed that the second part of the topic, maybe we can do that another time, looking at the position of the practitioner using solution-focused understandings and ways of working in NVR. Maybe we can talk about that another time.
Yeah, we can talk about loads of things.
Yeah.
List is endless.
Okay.
Well, thanks for listening to our fortnightly NVR podcast. Bye for now.
Bye.